All right, I'm here with the amazing Amanda Strojny. How do I say it? Do I say it like that,
Strony.
Strojny?
Yeah,
Strojny. I want to say it in like the
the Polish.
European
That's
way.
how my grandfather used to say it, so it's fine.
That GN. I love that GN sound so much.
Yeah.
And Amanda and I have been working together for the last year and 4 months, and that all began with the All-In retreat in New Hampshire, which we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, Amanda, I want you to share about where you were coming up to that point with the retreat, just kind of more of a background about you and the
Yeah.
world.
No, thank you. So I have a background in corporate finance and insurance. So I was in corporate America for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was a high school teacher, so a variety of different
Right.
skills that I've done. So I had been working for about 13 years in a routine job, something that I consider you go to every single day, right, at a certain time and come out and come in. And so before the All-In retreat, that January, I had left my corporate job.
Oh, it was
So
January.
yeah, I had made a decision to just leave. I was done. I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I just quit. And I didn't have a backup plan. I knew I wanted to travel. So I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii and got on the plane and was there for 2.5 months. And then I made my way to Australia and to Bali and back around to New Hampshire. So it was about 3 months that I was gone. So I got back in about April. And the transition back was rough for me. It was challenging to come back and to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And a part of me, although the travel was very exciting, I felt like it's easy sometimes to leave, and think that it's going to solve your problems. And
I
it didn't
know.
really work that way. So if
I
anyone
know.
thinks that, which I think we do, the fantasies of leaving your job are really fun. And it was that like huge feeling of like, I'm leaving this something I don't want to do. And it was really beautiful to explore and be on my own and learn things about myself. But it didn't solve my problems. So that's interesting.
Right. And then
Yeah.
you come back, you've been outside the bubble. We talked about this
Yeah.
before. Like that coming back into the bubble when you've been outside of it and you never knew the difference is
Yeah.
just like, it's brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
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 Wow. So that's what you did. Now, I want, if you would, because I think it's so important. You shared with me before, and I think it's really key. Part of your story is how you decided, how you came to the decision to quit your corporate job,
Yeah.
what that thing was in there, and what you were up against when you did that. Because in your world and your family and everything like that,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you tell it.
Yeah. 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 No, so I come from a family that is very, very work centered, very corporate America, career driven.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, especially my mom. So my mom and I have a very close relationship, and my mom has been in corporate America for her entire career. And she was in corporate America before women were seen as accepted in corporate America. So she sort of paved the way for women to be having a voice at the table.
So,
And so it's really powerful. And I grew up with that role model, seeing my mom, working in a corporate setting and being the one that was able to, come home and do the things that mothers do, the cooking, the cleaning, the being at my games when I was in high school, all the things that were important to me. And so my mom did both, and she managed to do it all. And so in my family, that was the path that I had thought was really the only option.
yeah.
Um, and going into teaching for me, I knew when I went into teaching that it was something I was passionate about, but I also had this drive to make more money. And I kept coming back to what my mother had done and seeing her be successful in business. And that was really one of the reasons why I went into business. And so she was, a mentor for me too, to someone that I could talk to and run ideas by. So when I left, my family was a little shocked, to say the least, that I was going to walk away from the benefits and all the things, and what did that look like, and what was I going to do, and so yeah, all the questions. But at the same time, they were sort of supportive, so it wasn't like a complete turning their back on me or anything. So Yeah.
Yeah. No, you had a feeling inside you, like
Hmm.
that really had taken hold. And how long was that feeling there before you took action on it to give your notice?
Yeah, that feeling had been there, I would say, for a couple years before I actually took
Okay.
action. And so, as I've shared with you, I before this time I was in a relationship and I was going to get married to this person, and I had moved and was working from home in my corporate job, and then that didn't work out. So I left that relationship, and as you can imagine, it was pretty um, hard and difficult for me to transition through that change and that feeling of loss. And so I knew during that time that the career wasn't fulfilling me either. So it was this feeling of nothing. Like, what is it that I really have left? And so it was always stirring inside me. But I think it took having some pieces in place where I felt a little more supportive in myself that I could make that move and really go for it before I actually did. But yeah, it was scary. It was definitely scary to go in there and say that I was leaving.
Right.
And it
For
was an
no,
interesting, yeah, conversation with my boss. I mean, we were going into this meeting for her to tell me about my end of year bonus and what was going to happen next. And I was like, well, I have to tell you something else. I'm not going to be staying here. So, but it was really well received by the people I worked with, and it was a good testament to me to remind myself just of the value within my work, right? Of who I was as a person, and that people actually respected my decision, knowing that I was following a path that was more aligned with what I wanted to do. It just wasn't fulfilling me being in a cubicle all day. So yeah,
right. And you knew it. And
yeah.
that was a really a big leap for you. And you
Mhm.
had, I mean, you had been preparing for the possibility of that for some time, but the idea of actually doing it and going through with it was, I think,
Yeah.
quite a different thing.
Yes. 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 Yeah. And I remember after about being there for a couple weeks, I had this feeling of like, what am I doing? Like, what am I supposed to do every day? Right? It's so you're in this routine that it's like you mean just like sit back and relax and just watch your bank account start to dwindle down and figure out what you're gonna do. I couldn't get my head around it, and so for a while it was like I wasn't able to relax. I wasn't able to, I would say, fully enjoy the experience
Right.
until I let that piece go that I didn't know what was coming next and could I be okay with that. And that was really my first time ever experiencing complete letting go, I would say, with trust and faith. I had known the concept. I'm a yoga teacher as well. So I have a 200-hour yoga certification. I'm very spiritual, and I've read a lot, and I've, done a lot of workshops and all the things that we do, right, to like feel
Right.
better. And I was like, I get the concept. You just let go. You don't have fear. It never could be done until I remember when I was in Hawaii, and I was just like, I don't know what's coming next.
Right.
And I had to trust, and it worked. It kept working itself out once I was able to do that. So it was
And
the first time I actually experienced it.
working itself out in miraculous ways. Like
Hmm.
miracles happen all the time when you
Yes.
actually move yourself into an unknown and you just keep accepting and surrendering in
Hmm.
that space. And the other thing about it was that you were there from your heart. Like every
Yeah.
decision had been made from your heart. Now, that's actually the core of what I wanted us to be talking about today. Because every client that I work with has their own theme in what their journey is and what part I get to walk in and walk with you on. And I feel like the theme in yours, the theme's kind of like it's not the best word, like the soul theme. Maybe that's a
Hmm.
better way to say it. Really, that I think that has been your heart, right? Your heart leading, you trusting your heart, listening to your
Yeah.
heart, um, coming up against all the places in your life where, being in your heart was not safe or acceptable or valid or, that wasn't that competent kind
Yeah.
of approach, right? It didn't produce money
Yeah.
necessarily. I mean, you know what I'm saying. And so as I guess as I think about that, so you had this whole lead up. Here's your background coming up, and in April you come back, and you were at this place. And if I remember correctly, and I would love for you to say, like you were like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Here I am. Now what? Is that what happened?
Yeah. It was that place of now what do I do? I want to do something that I'm passionate about. I want to figure that out, but what does that look like? Right? This place almost of I didn't really know what that all would, how that all could come together and what it would look like.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, along with what you said about my heart, it's like I still had these walls of protection up, of
Yeah.
safeguards, just to make sure that, you know, I wouldn't get hurt, you know, and so those were still, I think, very much there, even after having this travel and this experience of being opened.
Yes.
Like I said, it didn't solve everything. And so that's just it's a reminder I always bring to myself, right? Like I try to escape, you know, and leave, and
We
thinking
all
that
do.
it's gonna, yeah. And it's actually sometimes sitting in your own, in yourself for wherever you are, to figure it out. So
That's exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah,
And I think most often what happens when it comes to that point of, you know, you can sit with yourself so that things can move. We want to fill that space in. Our head wants to say, okay, I need to figure it out. There needs to be something here, and it needs to fit this framework that makes sense to me. And then we muck up the works in that process. But
mm-hmm.
I think that it was really powerful because when you talked about coming back, you had cracked open a space for the first time in your whole life
Yeah,
that was like, wait, maybe this idea of how I work and where I work and who I am to do all of that work doesn't have to be what I've seen.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly, yeah,
And you had already done your yoga teacher certification at that point, and
yeah.
you were
And I was
already
teaching.
right.
Yeah, I was teaching. I was on the path. I mean, what we call the path, right? Doing the work. I like to say, you know, I was going to the workshops, like meeting people. I was intrigued by all different types of spiritual teachings and different ways of looking at it. I have I still do a daily meditation practice. You know, I was always coming into myself every single morning, breathing, asana, all of it. So it was the tools. I would always come back to the tools no matter what. And that's been consistent for almost 4 years now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that is so powerful. So as you as you had all of this coming together, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like that you've made these huge choices that have been building over years. At that point, you'd had this major transition with your with you were going to be getting married, right? And that
Right.
relationship and everything, which was heartbreaking. And then you were you left, you quit the job, you left, you did all this travel, came back, you'd already done the yoga teacher training, you were teaching yoga, you were on that path, but you were still in this place of what next? Like
Right.
who am I and what next with whoever this is at this
Mm-hmm.
point? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. Very accurate. Yeah.
So what was it? What was the thing that caused you to say, I'm going to go to this retreat? Or what were the things?
Yeah. I think I was searching, you know, for definitely, I think when doing this work, it's like I'm searching for something, you know,
Right.
I go through these periods where it's like, oh, I need something else to just,
Right.
I don't know what, you know, and it was mentioned to me by a friend. She said, I just think this would be a good fit for you. And so as I came and as I continue on this path, when someone mentions something to me that I feel connected to, I try to listen, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's usually, it's probably going to be impactful. And so I just took a chance. I didn't know anything about you, really. I didn't have any
Mhm.
connection. It was just a friend that had said, you know, I think you'd enjoy this. It's a weekend. If you're available, you know, and I thought it was affordable. And so I said, you know, why not? So that was really the place I was in where I took a chance and didn't really know. And
Mhm.
as you remember, I had a lot of questions of like, well, what's the schedule? What are we doing here? So
I
um,
I
I
wrote
wanted to
about
know
it.
what was next.
I actually wrote about that because it was such a sweet moment. We had Mara and Karina had walked down with me to greet all of you, all the women who
Mhm.
were coming down where the parking was. And I could feel you were so warm, and we were hugging everybody. And at the same time, I could feel like there was a bit of this shyness. And then there was also like this skeptical part of you that was like right
Mhm.
here, which was the heart walls that you were talking about
Mhm.
earlier, right? You're
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't know what this is about, and I don't know who these people are, and
Mhm.
what is going on. And as we turn to walk back up that road, I will never forget this, Amanda. It's actually really one of the sweet things for me. When I think about my own, 20 years of work with so many people, that we were walking back up that road, and you looked at me, you said, so what's the schedule? And I just had that smile, like that mysterious twinkling smile. I turned and looked at you, and I took your hand. I didn't even say a word. I took your hand, and then I told you that I had it all in hand, and that you didn't get to know anything, and that was part of the weekend experience. And in the moment that I took your hand, I felt your heart
Mm.
so completely with mine. And you just smiled, and I thought, oh, like
Mm.
it was such a precious moment for me,
Yeah.
that right there.
Yeah, I didn't expect to experience what I experienced that weekend for sure. I didn't, I don't know that I was ready for it, nor do I know that I would have gone if I had known that's what it was going to be. If I probably would have, but I think it was at a point in my life where I did have those walls up, and I was very hesitant to trust people, and thinking, I feel like in the work that I'd done, there was so much out there that I already had this barrier up of like, what does this person know that I don't know, or that I can't get from my mom or someone else that I know? Like, I know what I'm doing, right? Like, so it's like, it was this feeling of like, I don't know if I trust this person enough to really give me anything. So, yeah.
Yes. And, I think that's probably a lot of people probably feel that way, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, they have the experiences in their lives. And I'm always, I mean, I feel like I'm open when I meet people, but I'm always, in that space of, my own path. So I think it's normal, but then there's also the heart wall part, right? If that gets brought in and there's a heart wall there, then that's a completely different part of that path
Yeah.
to to meet, to
Hmm.
confront, I guess. And that's what you did that weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That weekend was was very impactful. I remember it very clearly. I knew some of the people there. I had known some of the people, so it wasn't like everyone was new to me, but not on a few people on a deeper level, but not everyone. But it was just the power with which the space was held and contained for me that was I'd never seen anything like it, to be honest. I've never seen someone be able to hold space like that, and to have the conversation to get at what people were dealing with on a deeper level in such a quick time. I've really never seen anything like it, and that, to me, as someone that was skeptical and feeling like, oh, who is this person? To me, it was like, what just happened? This feeling of almost, and it was more because I am very observant of like an environment and what other people are experiencing. So before I even shared anything personally, it was the watching of you interacting with other people,
Yeah.
and them being able to eventually articulate, what was really going on, the ability to dig deeper into what their
Interesting.
actual blocks could be versus just surface level, right? What we come
Right.
up with, what we've told ourselves over time, like, this is what's going on. So I found that, that was the first, I think, the breaking open, and then the weekend itself of just continually feeling yeah, a lot of emotion for me, a lot of emotion and opening up and just, yeah, realizing that what I thought the problem was, or what I wanted to believe, what my issues were maybe different than that. And this was something that I've sort of always like gone around and tried to like put a little like band-aid on and then make it something else. And so that I can always, sort of avoid it. So it was like the first time where I actually felt like, oh wow, I think this is going to come to the surface. So I need to work with this person. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I remember that so well. And I remember, I think it was on the latter part of the second day. So we were really well into everything because
Mm-hmm.
it's 2.5 days. And that latter part of the second day, where you went, there was that moment you went back into that heart wall space after you had
Yeah.
opened everything up. And it was powerful for everybody when you broke open your heart walls, when you actually let that down and broke wide open. I think it, um, I think it gave so much affirmation to all these other women, because every one of them in their own right had their lives. They were strong women. They were smart. They were, at different places on their path for sure, but still, right? And I think it was a very special thing that you made the choice to be that vulnerable when you
Mm-hmm.
did and open up. And then there was that brief moment where, the skepticism and the cynicism and all of that had been there to protect your heart for so long came back up. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember that so clearly, and walking back in with you, like gently walking back in with you, and you just breaking it back down again. And I knew when you did that, when you broke it back down again, that you were not the same woman when you left the retreat. At that
Yeah.
point, yeah, you knew the difference
Mm-hmm.
inside for real, and you couldn't go back. It's like you finding yoga. Once you
Right.
knew that, there was no
Right.
going back.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you know, you can't avoid what you already know. You can't pretend like you don't know it. So you just have to accept it. Yeah. But I remember that as well. It was this feeling of, yeah, breaking down and then coming back into my behaviors of wanting to be protective
Right.
and just get out of there, to be honest. I didn't want to stay there the first day. I was like, I think I need to leave. This isn't for me. This is too much. Um,
You said that out
yeah.
loud,
Yeah.
which was so like totally ballsy. I loved it.
And it just, it felt for me too, to be outwardly emotional in front of other people is challenging for me, coming from a place in a family that is like, when it almost comes across as a weakness, as a woman, to not be able to like be confident and stand in your power. And it doesn't mean I wasn't emotional as a child and my parents, were able to embrace my emotions, but it's just that feeling of in a group where you don't know everyone so well, like, what are these people going to think of me if I am a total like train wreck in my mind and I can't control myself and I'm crying all weekend, and right, like, what are these people thinking? And so it was this feeling of guilt and like within me too, of like, what are these people going to think of me,
Right.
and those feelings. So
Right. And you navigated that. I mean, step by step. It
mhm.
wasn't easy. You were constantly dealing with that the whole weekend, because that's actually something, like what was underneath that was something that you and I then ended up working on together over this last year and 4 months
Yeah.
since the
Yeah.
retreat.
Yeah.
Um, and it really was something that had been getting in the way of your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Projection of what other people are going to think, and then who are they. I think that you described it, it hasn't come up in quite a while, I mean, really, but this like constant judgment, that it was either judging yourself or judging other people, or
Yeah.
they're judging me, or like there was like this judgment constantly in your head
Mm-hmm.
nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for most of my life, like I would say up until this point, and it's still there, right? It's just
Mhm.
not as strong, but it's been this feeling, yes, of like, what is this person doing? I don't look like that. I want to look like that. I want to be doing that. I want to be making that. I want to be getting there. And all of the judgments immediately, like going into a room and seeing people and just immediately like looking at people and judging, like, what do they have that I don't have? What do I have that they don't have? So I can sort of compare.
Right.
Right. And that was always just a method of feeling safe for me.
Right. I think that's well said, the method of feeling safe for you. And yet you knew that it was in direct contradiction to your yogic path. Like that was absolutely not part of the yoga. I mean, not part, but like that, the alignment of your yogic path didn't
Right.
allow for those kinds of, judgments to be constantly there. So you were in that
Yeah.
space right there. The other thing was that question you already placed earlier, which was you didn't know what next in your life. And so you came and you had this experience that you did not expect to have. In fact, you wanted to leave and you said it out loud.
Yeah.
Very brave of you. And then you stayed, which was even more brave of you. And why did you stay? Why?
I stayed because I don't give up. I can tell you that. There's very rare times in my life where I will walk away, right? Or just give up on something without being in it. And I had a feeling that I knew that this was going to be impactful, right? And I needed to stay, right, for myself. Right. And that it didn't feel comfortable, and that was okay too. I think it was my first time of sitting in the feeling of not being comfortable. And obviously with travel, that makes you not comfortable too. It's a lot of uncertainty, but it's just sitting in that uncomfortable space, not knowing really like what was going to come next or how I was going to feel, and just trusting that it would come through. Whatever it was.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that you shared that, because I think that's a good, it's a good touchstone for, everybody who will be able to share in this story that you are giving us, for everybody to be able to find, we all hit places like that where we're like, I'm out of here. Like, I want to leave.
Oh, yeah.
And then listening to something inside that says, no, you should stay. And you don't know why, and you don't know what it is that's there for you. And it's scary and it's so uncomfortable, and you don't want to freaking cry in front of strangers and, all the things, right? And then to have that feeling inside and say, all right, well, even with all the things, I'm going to stay and see what happens. I have to point that out, because I think that we have so many moments of bravery that we don't really acknowledge or give ourselves credit for, that are really, I think, on that soul level, we're directing ourselves where we want to go. And if we'll just hang out there a little longer, right?
Yeah. It's so true, and it's also, I think when you said that, I just think back to my relationship. It's like when I hear the call to leave, it was time to leave, right? And I had to listen to that, even though I didn't want to believe it and I wanted to stay. I knew that I couldn't stay. So it's like, you just know. And when you start to trust yourself, it was that, for me, it was like, we all have it, right? We all have the intuition and the sense of what we know. And if we get too far from it, we just don't feel it, but we can always come back to it. So
right. We disconnect from ourselves if we get too far from it. I thought about that with your relationship. I'm really glad that you shared that, because that was, here, but that's also, it was such a very painful and very private thing. And I really appreciate you sharing just a little bit about that, because I think that also was powerful in the path that has brought you to where you are now, that you were listening to the things inside that had no justification, right? Like that's kind of the theme over and over again. And it wasn't your head, in fact, quite the opposite. And then you had to come back and explain yourself to your mom and to other people who were like, what are you doing? And this makes no sense, and it's not smart, and who's this person, and what the hell? And
yeah.
Over and over again. And for you, so that's where I think it's really that kind of moment, looking at the full circle now, and then we'll come back and walk through some of these other details. But like, to look back and see that, right? And who you are and how you've come into who you are by meeting those moments and all of that pushback, and even from yourself, the pushback from yourself, which was, I think, the biggest
Mm-hmm.
of all, and choosing instead forward into that unknown space, but because of something inside you that said, yes,
Yeah.
it's time, or we need to do this, or stay right here, don't leave, all of those moments. So then when we started so right after that retreat, you said, I think I need to work with you.
I made that decision to work with you. But as you recall, early on, I was still very skeptical. So I worked with, I think it was the second or the third session.
It was the second.
I I had that moment where I said, and I've given you all this money and I don't know what the hell you're doing. Like, I don't believe it. If I'm frank, like, I just had that moment. And I think it's important to mention that because it's a valid feeling that people have when they invest money in something, right? They feel like, well, what am I getting? And that's how I felt. It was like, I believe this person sort of, but I'm also still having these walls of protection up. And so
Yes.
that was a moment I think of with you. I remember specifically, I think you said to me, like, so then don't work with me or something, or I don't remember the exact words, but it was almost like, okay, well then what are you going to do? Right. And it was just, I think that understanding and trusting and feeling that you were seeing me. And I think for me, that was important, the feeling, the connection and the relationship was important to me more than the information that I was getting.
Right. That you thought you ought to be getting.
That's what I needed. And I think that moment was pivotal for me to then trust you.
To go all in.
Yeah. And to let you in and to say that I really wanted to do this versus, I just was hoping that, it would be easier, that, you know what I mean? You would just give me the answers. So, right. Cause it's almost like, I think of it as we want the answer. I wanted the answers really quickly. And I didn't see, like, it was like one session and it's like, okay, here we go, talking about all this stuff. Where is this going type thing? And not really believing in it because I wanted something more concrete right out of the gate.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't know what that concrete would be, and it was already inside you, but you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, I don't want to do the work to do that. No, I think that's totally, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I actually went in preparing for this time together for the recording, I had actually written about that as well, remembering that. And it was so powerful. I remember we were sitting over coffee at, what is the,
Laney and Lou's.
Laney and Lou's, right. That's what it was. That place. Yeah. And as we're sitting there, and you said straight out, like, I've spent a lot of money and I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. And I want you to, I want to know what I'm going to get out of it. And I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're legit. You were saying all these things to me, right? And I knew, because I had asked straight in. I felt it when we were even just sitting down. I felt all of it. And I didn't know what had caused it, but I knew that you were feeling it. And so I wanted to go straight in on that, because I mean, really the fundamental thing is the truth sets us both free. So whatever that was, we were going to get down to it. And I had no defense for you. There was none. I just said, there's no, I can't remember how I said it exactly, but I know that it was actually speaking straight to your heart, the real thing that your heart wanted to know, which was, this is a defenseless process. This is real and true for you to understand on your own terms, and you're either in or you're not in. And I knew inside myself, I knew that I trusted myself, which I do so clearly, that I didn't need for you to believe in me. I didn't need for you to trust me. That all that meant was that you didn't know how to trust yourself yet. And that was the work that we were going to do. And you were either going to choose into doing it or you weren't. And I knew that as that guide, I was 100% to be able to walk that path, whether or not you chose it. That's what you felt in that moment when I responded to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it's now looking back at it and in the work that we've done, right? It's the uncovering for me of the stories that I've told myself, like that I, as like a defense mechanism, right? I've put these walls up so that people can't get in, and if I make it like, if I ask these questions and get, like, what are you going to give me? What are most people like? I know their response, right? So it just proves the fact, right, that I'm like almost testing the ground,
Right.
right? Playing a little game to try to figure it out. And I think that has this process and this work has helped me to just stay fully open in my heart so that I no longer play those games with anyone, right? Like it's just,
Yeah.
like you said so beautifully, like you know who you are. And so I don't have to play a game to try to figure out who someone else is, right?
Right.
So yeah.
And your heart knows, and that's what we talked about
Yeah.
after the moment. And I said, your heart already knows. You already had the experience
Yeah.
over the retreat weekend, and your heart knows exactly what is and is not. And, it's your choice of whether you're going to trust it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew that. And I think that was very different from most of what you had encountered, if not all, I don't know,
Yeah.
in your life at that point. Somebody who had no agenda. There was no agenda, and
Yeah.
just the true work that I do. And with the people that I do it with, and your heart was ready, like all these things that you just talked about that brought you up to that moment. And I felt that there was so much energy between us sitting there at Lady and Lou's
Mm-hmm.
in that moment. And um, and I knew your heart, you knew my heart, and that was a historic moment.
Yeah. It was. I remember it clearly. Yes. Mhm.
So beautiful. So looking at what has come about in this last year, would you just give to share some of the things, the key moments that brought you down the path, right? What are the things that really stand out for you? What are things that you have created with our time of working together that weren't on your radar, that, things that weren't there before, and what has come out of the ether down to the ground?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. I went into this, I think, with the expectation of figuring out more of what I was going to do next, right? Career wise, like what that looked like for me and my passion and what I was doing. And what came out, I think a lot of the bigger issues, definitely my relationship with my mom has been a huge eye-opening experience for me, and in a good way, right? To understand just what that looked like. And I had never ever even thought that it was spilling over into other areas of my life. And so just to have that honest look at it and to explore it and to have those conversations with her, it's changed our relationship, and it's changed in a good way, right? We're both able to handle it a little bit differently. And so that codependency, I would say, I didn't realize how immersed I was in it, and how reliant I was on it for support.
Yeah.
So that I wasn't prepared for. And like I said, it's definitely was spilling over into all areas of what I felt like. I think going into this, for me, I thought I've always had some issues with my body and the connection to myself and what I look like. And I think was using that, like thinking that was the problem. And I don't know that it really was the problem. It was maybe a variation of it, but it was deeper than that. It was deeper into these relationships. So
really well said.
yeah.
Very succinct.
Yeah.
Very clear. I hope everybody who listens to this hears that right there.
Yeah. And that problem, it's like I think I've identified the food and the body and all of it for so long that I convinced myself, right, that that was the issue. And allowing these other things to sort of overtake and to get into them.
Right. And I think that one of the things that was so powerful for me in your process with this, as we work together to help you challenge yourself out of that codependent space, it was that place where there's so much love and there's, so much generosity and all of that. But then there's also the codependent patterns that can build up. Every person that I have ever encountered ends up having some form of these in one way or another, right? So of course this happens, but you really wanted to feel your strength and your power, especially to be able to figure out, what am I going to do next? And
Right.
it's not going to fit, I don't think, what everybody else expects. And you couldn't get to the clarity about that because of the codependence of this
Yeah.
pattern still in your life.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was preventing me from being independent in my thinking, right?
Yeah.
The ability or the way in which I was sharing all of my information without holding this space within myself where I could have discernment and power and really think about what I wanted and have these experiences where it was just me, whether it was an experience with myself or with someone else, like a relationship or a partner,
Right.
that I could just be in it with that situation and not involve a third party like my mom or someone else,
Right.
um, allowed me to come into my own independence,
Yes.
right? And my freedom for being what I wanted and where I wanted to go. So I never realized really what was going on, or that it was even there, until I started to, we worked together and look at it, and
That
just
was
have awareness now to shift the focus and to
right.
know it. Yeah.
And that was right out of the gate. I didn't know
Yes.
when it started. I didn't know anything. I just remember walking into those sessions, and pretty much, I think by that third session, we
Mm-hmm.
were already working into those things. Um, and it was such a surprise, because I had, you had said, these are the objectives I have for the
Mm-hmm.
time that we're, with the intensive, the 12 weeks of that intensive. These are things I want to work on. And I'm surprised, not in this way of like, oh my gosh, but like, oh, that wasn't on my radar, right? And then all of a sudden, bam, in that third session, just walking in, for me, it's the golden thread. I follow the golden thread in people.
Yeah.
I don't know anything. And in that process, it's like the little sparklies, like they just go off in the place, like, oh, you're going to go here. I'm like, okay, we're going there.
Yeah.
And the power that has come through with that process of dismantling in yourself, like you said, your independence and your ability to have your own independent thinking and trusting yourself in your thinking, those are all foundational. It wasn't about, this idea of getting free from your mom, because it wasn't that, even though I think at the beginning it felt like that, but
Mm-hmm.
really it was having to move out of the space of the pattern that wasn't working, so that the new one that was so vital based on all the other good things that were there could really be
Yeah.
established at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And the relationship that I have with my mom is just as loving and strong as it was before, just in a different way. And so that for me is reassuring, knowing that it's not like, my mom and I have now we're not in touch with each other or something. We're very close. And it's just interesting how it shifted, and it's still a place of love.
Right. A deeper connection, but it
Yeah.
doesn't ever come into the space of undermining your worth and your sense of self and your own strength like it had before,
Right.
because of where it was, things were misconnected, and they need to connect in the right ways. So the other thing that this sparks for me is that you're coming into this place of your own independent thought brought you to consider creating your own business.
Yeah. 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 I didn't know what was coming. And I think we spent a lot of time working through these things with my mom, and some other things personally that I believe needed to be done before anything could really come up from a
Very
business
much.
perspective. So that was the reason sort of why it was, we've worked together for a longer period of time, and which I felt has been really impactful, because the first part I felt required me to spend that time before I could even think about having an idea pop, or having that really see what that looked like.
Yes. Well,
But I did, yeah, it came to me as a linking of really what I was already doing, but how could I intertwine the two fields. And so as I mentioned, I'm a yoga teacher, so I teach yoga, And then I also have a background in finance. So I started a business doing financial coaching for people within the wellness space. So specifically yoga teachers, healers, people that are spiritually creative, to help them understand the principles of money so that they can learn to be successful in their business, and to overcome the blocks that they have around money and dealing with whatever that's blocking them from getting abundance. Yeah, so it came out of that very beautifully, and that has been a learning and evolving too. So yeah.
It is. And the thing that was so interesting is, I had that sense that you were going to move into something that was just your own. But as we started into those sessions, and like you said so well, it took, and at first you were like, wait, I want to just get on to what am I going to be doing and building? Like, that's what I want to focus on. But it was all this other work on yourself that was necessary first so that the ground could be solid for you to ask those questions, and you were ready for them when they came. So when it did happen, it was like, for me on my side, I remember that session where we really came down to that. And I remember that feeling of like, wow, she's solid. Like there's this, it's not something where I would have a lot of people when we're working on their business model or what is it that they want to do and all of that, where we're just pulling things down and we're trying things out. And then maybe, we start to have something solidify. For you, it was like, bam, bam, right there. And I felt you in this place that was so super solid, even if the model of how the business is going was still going to be figured out and you're going to try this and try that. But the fact that you knew this and that you not only knew it, but you knew how to help people very clearly, like you intuitively, just like I know how to do the work that I do and how I've learned and come down my path, like you had this solidness on that path already ready to go and to learn more as you continue down it, helping people, but you already knew what to bring to them and help them to get to that place of greater success. It starts from the inside and moves out, because in those industries, there are these kind of built-in blocks about you can't be, a healer or a yoga teacher and actually make money. And that needs to stop, right? Like that's what you're doing, and you're stopping it from the foundation rather than trying to, just, hit the airwaves with this needs to stop. You're like, hey, come here. You're going to stop it from inside yourself, which of course is the path, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. 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 It was very organic, I think, in the way that it came about, which I think is important to, like you said, to feel it within yourself. And I think this is the first time in my life for anything that I've done where I've actually taken the time to feel within myself that I feel aligned and that I want to do it, and that it is the thing that I should be doing versus the thing that other people think I should be doing, because other people don't and still maybe don't really understand, or like, really, what are you doing? So it's interesting, to have the confidence in what I'm doing and to feel it within myself and to know that that's really all I need. And for me to even say that, I think, I just listening to myself say that is very powerful, because I never really thought it was possible. So, yeah.
Oh, I honor that so completely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So along that path of the last year and a half, you hit up against over and over again this internal belief, like subconscious belief of arrival, right? Like, where was the arrival? And you kept coming up against that. And because of that, you would hit these walls and it would hurt. There would be so much pain, and like the self-doubt would pop up at different moments. And every time we would walk into those places, there would be some form of this belief about, I should be here already, or there's this arrival place that is supposed to be hit. And I guess I just have to get there and, or whatever, right? Do you want to speak about that for?
Yeah, no, it was one of the biggest lessons in our work together, for sure, because it's an instilled belief in me, this arrival of getting somewhere. Like, if I make this much money, then I'll be good. I'm starting my business. If I get this many clients now, then I'll be successful. But if I don't, then I failed. So it always created failure and brought me back into the judgments and the pieces of comparison between people of, well, this person's doing it and they're successful, so why aren't I successful? And realizing, I think what's most important to me and what I want to bring up with the arrival piece is that, and what you've showed me and helped me to understand, is coming back to my own values of what it is that I want to live my life by, right? And what I've chosen to live my life by, and the path that I've chosen to go, and what's important to me. And so if I'm doing the things that are important to me and I'm following in those steps and they're aligning with my values, then I am doing what I need to be doing, and there won't be any arrival, because it will just continue to evolve and change. But that's a way of checking back in with myself, which is something that I am forever grateful for you for, because it's such an invaluable lesson. And I don't, I just want people to hear that, because it's really been one of the most beautiful things that you've shown me, not only through what you've told me, but just by yourself, right? And that's where I think the true beauty lies in you, is that you gracefully do this work inside of you. And it's not, these sessions are not about you, right? Because I'm paying the money and they're about me, and that's the way it should be. But I can see, for me, having the respect that you're doing the same things and you can share authentically from the heart, which is very valuable for me, to know that someone really sees me and I see them with the same level of respect and trust. So yeah.
You said that beautifully.
Thank you.
Like, core to the principles of the work that I do. And I guess I would say I don't often have somebody who sees it down to that level of clarity, as you just described, and as you have seen throughout this last year. And that, for me, as I've shared with you, has been such a gift, such a very precious gift to me. To I mean, on my side, you don't, because you are also a guide for people, you don't go into it to be seen, right? Whatever people see is what they need to see. It's a mirror for them. And your heart's completely invested. And also no bullshit, no putting up an illusion like you somehow have it all figured out, and like everything's clean and tidy on this side, and just keep going, you're gonna get there,
Right. And that's the piece, right? Even for you, with what you've shown me, as there's no arrival for really anything. And so we're all learning, right? And we're all growing. And the work with you is a different kind of work. And I think that I wish that everyone could do it, because I think it is beyond impactful. And there's just more, there's no words, for the feelings and the changes and the transformation. But I know when I look at myself in the mirror and I see myself, every day, I feel like and it's not an arrival, but I feel like it's an arrival into my true self. Yeah.
Totally.
Coming home to my own soul, and what I've craved for my whole life is finally what I'm feeling and what I'm living and what I'm experiencing. And it doesn't mean every day is beautiful, for sure, but that I know what that feels like, right? And I know that it's available.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your words are so true. I mean, anybody who's listening to this can feel it go straight into their hearts when you said what you just said, and know themselves in the same place. And I think that is why, for me, it's the greatest tribute you could ever say, that you would come back into your own self. I feel like that's the gift that we're here showing up for on the planet with each other all the time. And I love that, saying that, the quote that we have two hands, one to reach up ahead to be helped, and one to reach back to help somebody come along as well. And that, I think, really symbolizes what you just shared. Your ability to look in the mirror and have yourself means that you've got these two hands and you're using them. And that's what I've watched happen with you. And that even most importantly, these places where that normal self-doubt that we all have, or the places where, you know, things fall out from under us, or they just get emotionally really painful and hard, that can throw us so off. And my watching, as you know, we continue down, and you'd send me a text or a little voice text, and you were so wonderful about it. You're like, okay, well, and you were keeping your heart open, even though it was so hard, you know,
Yeah.
back at the beginning. And I just loved you so much for your just being that honest
Yeah.
and trusting me so that I could reach back and say, you got this, and you're fine, and you have
Yeah.
it, and I'm here, and I know who you are. And for you to feel the power of yourself, there was no dependence on me. There was just the knowing that connection, right? The connection is real. And okay, and I come back to myself. And I watched you when this last summer, you took that leave to go to Hawaii and teach yoga and have this
Yeah.
wonderful space for yourself. And you hit a huge wall when you
Yeah.
got there.
Yeah.
And then to watch how you worked yourself through that wall, the very things that we're talking about right now. Do you want to say just a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was really powerful. And I had done all this work, right, with you. It had been it would have been a year.
It was a year.
And I took another trip to Hawaii to teach and go away by myself. And I had been in a new relationship. And so then I got there and I just felt very lonely. And I didn't, you know, I reverted back to these old behaviors of feeling like I didn't know myself anymore. And I didn't know if this, you know, this relationship was going to work, or what I was doing there. And if I had made a mistake, and what, right, all these questions, like, what am I doing? And so, you know, instead of doing the things I had normally done, like reaching out to my family or asking for help, I sort of sat in it by myself and just allowed myself to feel into this space of loneliness and sadness, and to understand what it is that's a part of me too, right? And when I could understand that, instead of avoiding it or pushing it away or thinking that someone else could solve it, just understanding all the pieces of me, that I think that is, it's just so imperative to know that, you know, it's not good or bad. It's just a piece of you that you can have and sit with, and know that you're, you know, it's a part of you, and that's okay.
It is. And something changed very powerfully in that space. And I felt it, I knew it when I got your voice text, and you had walked yourself through, and you had yourself. Because that's the only way, like, we can learn the principles and we can practice them in different ways, and then we'll have these really big things come up, right? And then we get to, you know, find ourselves thinking, wow, did I not learn anything? And like, is this like whatever? And then to walk through and find that we do, and you did, and to feel that, and you knew it so powerfully that there was this shift, kind of the sea change, if you will, right? You were on the ocean as well. I felt your peace at a deeper level than I had ever felt it after that point. And you enjoyed the rest of your time in Hawaii. I mean, whatever came up, you sat with yourself, you journaled, you took that quiet and that retreat and that, you know, respite for yourself in some really, really amazing ways. Now, then coming from that back, and we picked up our sessions, and and you had, way back at the beginning, you like wanted to know why you're on the planet. And I talk about purpose, and I teach about purpose and vision, and we had already worked into some pieces of vision, and we knew you were aligned with your purpose. We just didn't have the actual, like, hear the words that your heart and soul speak out that are so clear, the simple words that this is. And then in those sessions that followed, we came to this place, this moment. Where your words that were yours, just yours alone, nobody else on the planet, emerged in a session just like that. One day. And that happens when I work with people, and they stay in and they don't jump out too soon, and they keep going on those deeper layers, right? And they're not they get to the point where they move through their self-doubt, they move through the shadow parts that really pop up, that there's this place that comes. And also I would have to add the falling in love with themselves. There's the other side of it, the falling in love with themselves and moving through the shadow, that comes to this moment, this beautiful, like synergistic moment, unexpectedly, quietly. And you know your soul's purpose on the planet, Amanda.
Yeah, I do.
That's a big thing to say.
And I didn't know that it was possible. Like, I didn't think that it was possible or that it mattered. I don't think I even knew what that meant, right? That, like, what's my soul's purpose on the planet? I don't, but it's just so important to understand what it is, so that I'm always living from that place, right? And with everything that I'm doing, it's aligning back into that place. And that's when I know that I'm doing the right work and that I'm on the right path. And it doesn't equate to anything like if I'm making a lot of money, or I'm doing this, or have this material thing, or I look like this, or I look like that. That's all doesn't matter. It's really inside of me, right? The test to know that I'm on the right path and I'm doing the right things. And so,
right,
like, things still happen, and I still feel those thoughts creeping in of what about this, what about that. But when I can come back to that and know that within myself and feel it and trust it, is when I know that I'm fully grounded and that I've arrived in myself.
yes.
Yeah.
Everything moves out from there.
Right.
Any of those spaces of unknown that pop up for you, you always now have that reference point back into yourself. And the unknown is not this like, oh my God, right? Like, you know where you're headed now. You know where things are. So I just have a couple last little questions to ask you. The first is, what would you say was the biggest, I think you've already articulated it, but if you were talking to somebody who had similar experiences in their life that you had and had the spaces of loneliness that you have experienced that have been so painful and in moments devastating, and also had, that deeper question and drive to find out, wait, I want to be living my truth and in alignment. What would you say to them about this work? How would you describe that for them?
Yeah, I would say that they need to do this work with you, and not from a sales pitch of like, I am not a person that sugarcoats. So Carmel knows me, but I say it how it is, and I'm very authentic and real. And I've experienced a lot of people and seen a lot of things and tried to do this work on my own. It's not that this was something that I was avoiding. I was trying to figure it out on my own and with people. And I think that it's this piece, the connection and the ability to truly see someone, that the work that you do, that Carmel does, is invaluable. It's the ability to see someone's heart, right? And to hold space, and to fully trust and be available. That has been something that I couldn't even have imagined. I didn't think that, I can't put a price tag on that. And I've said this to you before, yes, it was a big investment, and I would have invested double, triple the amount if I wouldn't, hands down, because you can't put a price tag on it. And I think, not everyone is equal, right? And we know that, right. But it's having the ability to see people and to be authentic and real and available. And I knew that I needed to sit with things, but I also knew that you were available for me, and that you were honest and there when I needed it. And that to me is something that, is not all across the board. So I really appreciate that. And I want people to know that, because, I've seen people, and I've seen other coaches, and I've seen, all the work that's out. There's a lot of stuff out there, and it's not all the same. Right. And we don't all have that same connection. So. Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
of course.
From my heart to yours, thank you.
Yeah.
And so here's my last little question.
Mhm.
If you were with someone who was so very like you on their path, but had
Yeah.
not come to where you were, and you had just a minute or two to say something in their ear that was reassuring or connecting them back to themselves because you know the path, what would you say to her?
I would say first and foremost to start to open your heart to yourself, and to trust people that come into your life at the right moments, and to know that they're there for a reason, and to be open to receive, with an open heart, which has been one of my greatest obstacles and greatest gifts, and to just be available, because there's so many ways that we can start to open up, and open up, and so many ways that we have these walls. And so it's just starting to be uncovering it, and knowing that it's a process, and that there's no end destination, but just to feel that little bit of joy in every day,
Perfect.
is really what I was always striving for, and that's, something that I do feel. So yeah, thank you.
You just said it to her. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying it. I
Thank you.
love you dearly.
I
Thank
love you.
you so much. And